finally write a short story. First of all, you know that to write a story, we need to use some adverbs. Adverbs help you to improve your the events of the story, the actions. Here you have some adverbs. Let's differentiate between the adverbs and the adjective to revise them and make them familiar to you. Okay, number one is lucky. Okay, he is a lucky person. Here we describe the person himself, while when we want to describe the action or the verb, we will say luckily. Occasional, occasionally. Occasion means the verb doesn't happen every time or always or usually. It happens from time to time. Happy, we know what does it mean, happy? The adverb happily. Obvious means the clear. So the adverb obviously. Cautious, when you do something with being careful. Okay, it's not something safe, so you have to be cautious, and the adverb is cautiously. Sudden, as we said before, sudden, something happened just like this. There is no introduction or plan. Suddenly. Complete, completely. The entire, the whole. So we say complete. Okay. Let's do the exercise here. Here you have some adverb, okay, and you will put them in the right context. Number one, it was a beautiful spring morning and the children were playing in the garden. So, describe the playing of the children in a beautiful spring morning. For sure, we will go with happily. Happily. Number two, the sentence starts with adverb, then car came out of the accident with only a few scratches. So he had an accident and he did not get injured. Okay, so what can we say here? For sure, we will say luckily, because it's something good. It's something means that he was very lucky man. My best friend and I don't have much time to see each other anymore. So, in the past, they see each other more than now. So, but we get together to chat and exchange news. For sure, something don't happen always or usually. We will go with occasionally. After the climb up the mountain, we were exhausted. What do we mean by exhausted? It means very, very, very tired. So, the answer will be for sure completely. The vet approached the injured bear. So, the vet is the doctor who examines animal. Okay? Approached the injured bear. We know what is the bear. Bear is one of the wildest animal. So, he will not be so comfortable. So, he will be cautious and approached cautiously. Dennis had almost reached the top of the tree when the branch broke and he fell to the ground. So, if you look at the given adverb, you will find the action happened with no introduction, okay, or a planning, so suddenly. Maria was upset and did not want to talk to us. Maria was obviously upset and didn't want to talk to us. It was clear that she was upset. Okay. Now we will start do the story outline. Okay. If you will write a short story, you need to plan for it very well. You need to write something we call it outline, which means the draft or the main points of the story. Okay. Each story has introduction, main part, and conclusion. Introduction is all about setting. What do we mean by setting? It's the place, okay? Or if you answer this question, you can choose the suitable setting. Where does the story take place? Where does the place, what does the place look like? You have to describe the place. Like in our previous lesson, we said al-Khubar, and we talked about the beaches, and it was beautiful. Okay, what does this place mean to the main character? Okay, why does the action in the story take place here? As we said, if you remember the previous lesson, we said they decided to go fishing, then they decided to swim. Okay, so this was the story took place in Al-Khubar beach. Okay, then you have to choose your main characters. What was the main character in the previous lesson? He was Ammar, and we can say Sami too. Okay. Then the beginning of the story. In competition, most of the time they gave you the beginning, but you can write your own beginning of the story is something belong to you. Okay, after that we will go to the main part. And it can be called the plot or conflict. Okay. Conflict mean you will answer this question. What does the main character want? Remember the previous lesson. He wants to make the most of the day. We can say he wanted to play a trick on Ammar. Okay. How does he or she try to get what he or she wants? Okay. As if you remember, sorry, let's say there was a shark in the sea, and it was just a trick. How does he or she action affects the other characters? Remember the previous lesson, they all get scared and ran out of the sea. How do his or her action affect the setting itself? Okay, as we said, they ran out of the sea, and when they discovered it's just a trick, another trick of Sami's tricks, they chasing him or followed him or ran after him. How does he or she change because of his or her action? Okay, then we will go to the conclusion. In the conclusion, you have to describe the outcome of the story, and you can make a brief comment on the story, like it was a memorable day, it was let's say unforgettable day, unforgettable memories. It's up to you. Okay. We talked before about the adverbs and how it helps you to how they helps you to improve your action. Here we will talk about something we call time linkers. Time linkers. Time linkers help you to connect the series of action together. So some of these time linkers, you can use it at the beginning or continuing or conclusion. Okay, let's go for the beginning. Like initially, it could be, by the way, words or phrase. Initially, first, or at first. Continuing, we can use then, next, after this, that, afterwards. Conclusion, finally, in the end. In the end is a phrase. It means more than one word. Okay, there are others, time linker, like meanwhile, the moment that, gradually, since, by the time, before, in the meantime. Okay, here, if you go back to your lesson, you can see it here, few moments later. There are others, linker, like during, as soon as, until, when. Okay, so you have to be careful when you choose these time linkers because it will affect your writing. Okay, here you have a text and you have to circle the correct word or phrase. All of them or most of them are time linkers. Adventure stories have been told since when? The beginning of time. So he is talking here about adventure stories beginning. So since or when, the beginning of time? For sure since, because we have action, the beginning of time, action, so it takes since. To this day, the adventure story is a tool used to warn, okay, entertain and teach children all over the world. So these are the uses of the adventure story. Before, initially, fairy tales were told in order to teach good and fair decision. So the answer is initially, for sure. Initial, initially comes from initial or initiative. It means at the very beginning. One such story is Little Red Riding Hood. This is one of the most famous story, which speaks of the adventures of a girl giving the message that children should never talk to strangers. As we know, that the children should never talk to strangers, and to make this message so easy for them, we can use story or fairy tale. Gradually, or hardly, the story started becoming more focused on action than on adventure, but the moral lesson still remained. So after a while, or let's say with time, they start focused on action than adventure, because most of the people loved action. So for sure, gradually there is a changing, but it happens not at once. No, it was gradually. Okay. Meanwhile, or after, comic books started being released, published, it means, and a new fan base of teenagers was created. So, meanwhile, or after, comic books started being released. For sure, we will go with meanwhile. Usually, comic books or book creators, it means authors or publisher, find a traditional story or fairy tale. So most of the comic story or fairy depends on traditional story or fairy tale. Next, or by the time, they rewrite it to make it more adventures and to fit their own characters. So, the next time you sit down and read a comic book, remember that the story, it was based on also lived an adventure than or before it reached you. So there is something happened and then it reached you. So for sure it will be before. Okay, now you will write your own outline as we said before, introduction, main part and conclusion, and you will follow the rules. As we said in the introduction, you will describe the setting of the story, place, introduce the main characters or main character if just one character, describe feeling at the beginning of the story, then you will go to the main part, 2 or 3 paragraphs for the main part, describe how the story started and developed, then you will come to the conclusion, you will describe the outcome of the story, the result of the story. Could also be included in the main part. You can take the conclusion to the main part and you can make a brief comment on the story. You will start your writing task, read the rubric below and then write your story from 120 to 180 words. You will write it in your workbook. The introduction sentence is, Michael did not really like adventure, but that day he had no choice. Okay, this is an international online magazine organizing a short story competition, and you have decided to take part in this competition. Okay, rule says that the story must begin with the following words as we told you before. Okay, so you can use the previous lesson as a model but never copy it. Write your own experience, use your own words to make it more real and easier for you. When you are writing a short story, remember that you should try to keep the plot of the story simple. Don't make it complicated. The story should continue from or end with prompt sentence. The story should be organized in paragraphs, 1 paragraph for the introduction, 2 paragraphs or more for the main part, and another paragraph for the conclusion. You should use past. Remember, we said past, past simple, past progressive. We call them narrative tenses. You should use time linkers. Go back to the time linkers that we covered in this lesson. And you should try to create an appropriate atmosphere by using direct speech, question, variety of adjectives and adverb, and vivid vocabulary. Here is your workbook, a story. And by this, we come to the end of our lesson. Hopefully you enjoy it. See you next lesson.